Welcome to my presentation of perceptions and culture. I'll try to keep it brief. The first thing I just wanted to mention was we're talking about web-based social cognition, but to understand the concept of web-based social cognition, it's important that we understand basic social cognition. Social cognition is the understanding of oneself, thoughts, and perceptions in other people in a social setting. One could summarize this by concluding that this process is the ability to read other people and their actions, including ourselves, and then to base our perceptions based on these actions. It is being able to predict how we behave as well as those around us. It does not necessarily mean that we can read people just based on what they say, but also what they do. Body language is a big form of communication with eye contact, tone of voice, posture changes, and facial expressions, which are just part of what make up the ability to read cues and interpret what somebody's feeling, how they're behaving, or kind of builds upon what we see for someone when we interact with them for the first time. Social cognition develops early in childhood, and so this is something that we get from our backgrounds and from our upbringing. A lot of times it also has to do with the education of the mother, who uses whatever she's learned in her child rearing. Certain educational backgrounds definitely has some advantages in lifestyle and social interaction over others. So this will definitely be something that affects how one views the world around them. Now that we know what social cognition is and how it develops, defining web-based social cognition is easy. It's basically the same exact thing, except for you're doing your social cognition on the internet. The internet age has brought very good technologies in a lot of ways, such as social media pages, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all these other platforms that people use to interact with one another in real time. Even platforms where you can video chat, such as Zoom and Messenger, are being used widely, especially in 2020, as of the presentation timing, which is 11/22/2020. There are certain unique challenges with how interactions over the web happens versus in person. It is much more difficult to try to read a person when they are posting something online. A lot of times people will actually think about what they post. They will delete and rewrite. They will not necessarily always say what they mean. They only say what they want you to see. When a person is doing the same thing in person, they can't really delete what they've said already. And you can not read tone on the internet, but you certainly can read tone when you are speaking to a person face to face. So what you're looking at in that particular case is that while we have limited information on the internet, we still have the same desire or maybe subconscious perceptions of people. We just do it in a more simplistic way. So we just don't have as much information as we get when we're reading somebody who is looking at us and they have a facial expression or they say something to you and now they can't delete it and change what they wanted to say to you. Also, a lot of people have a tell, so when they make up a story, you can tell pretty much right away, versus when they're online, you sort of don't always know. You just kind of read through it and you have to hope for the best. So there's a lot of things that you just don't get online that you get in person, where someone is giving you their full body language. Every culture is unique, so our perception of cultures and relations to ourselves and others are based on the beliefs that stem from that culture. This could be anything from religion, as to the way that they celebrate things, upbringing, education, and even geographical location. Sometimes we'll want to gravitate towards people like ourselves because of commonalities. Our own beliefs are similar, so we can relate, and the desire to be liked by a person. We also want to definitely do activities that we like with each other. Opportunities are also a part of cultural expansion. Stereotypes of other cultures, which are different than our own, are very common, and this does not change. It does not matter where you are from. Everybody has a different perception of one another. In the United States, there's a freedom, ability to interpret the Bible in a Christian worldview. There are so many different religions to choose from when we're making these interpretations, but a lot of them are based in Christianity. Whereas in other countries, you don't see always that their beliefs are based in Christianity. For example, in India, there are multiple gods that are being worshipped, and even certain statues. For example, the fertility statue is sort of common there, which is kind of interesting. The belief is that if you rub the statue's belly, then you're going to have a baby. It's just stuff like that that's very different. We might think that's insane, but they might think that what we're doing is insane as well. So definitely culture has huge impact. Perceptions do vary, for sure. Different beliefs and teachings, environment, and social interactions all play how we see one another. A culture is a way of life that incorporates all those things within it. Even what we choose to eat is varied from place to place. For example, again, in India, you're not going to be finding a serving of a beef hamburger because it's the cow that is treated sacred there. Whereas in the United States, there's a hamburger fast food restaurant in every corner practically. So they definitely look at us a little bit different because we treat our animals slightly different. Also, there's just other things like besides India, for example, in the African culture, there is a lot of non-materialistic things that we see there compared to here. The United States is largely materialistic. Everybody wants more. They're never happy with what they have, it seems. They want the biggest house, the biggest, best car, things like that. So we're keeping up with the Joneses, and there are other countries that do that, but typically speaking, if you're going into some of these lesser developed areas, you're just not going to see that. They're going to be basically struggling to survive. So there's some differences there too that give us certain perceptions. Recently, I had the ability to become a surrogate for a couple in Catalonia, Spain. The language in Catalonia is slightly different than in other areas of Spain. There is a French-Spanish dialect or an Italian-Spanish dialect there versus us speaking English. Now, Spanish and Italian are fairly similar from what I understand. I don't speak it, so I can't say that for sure, but that is just what I have been told in various classes. There are many differences in how we live. However, I just kind of touched on a couple. In Spain, it's common for pregnant women, for example, to drink a glass of wine every single day with dinner. In the United States, we just don't do that. March of Dimes tells us, nope, we can't measure the safe amount of alcohol that crosses the placenta, so don't do it. In Spain, there's a lot more public transit than there is across the United States. Now, if you're looking at New York or, somewhere like that, yes, you're going to see a lot of public transit because there's really just not a choice. There's too much traffic there. But in other areas of the United States, you're just not seeing that. While in New York City or Las Vegas, you might see a really good nightlife. You're not going to see that true of other states. Our mall actually closes at 9 p.m. And so when you're going from state to state, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of people eating at 11 p.m. At just some random restaurant where you will in Spain. So that was kind of interesting. And their dinner time is 10 p.m. at night. So our dinner time here in the United States is about 7 p.m., sometimes a little earlier, just depending on what somebody's job is and, things like that. Most of what my intended parents told me could be found on Google. Most of the articles about cultural differences between us and Spain were not really scholarly, but mostly opinion-based, actually. It seems like each person had their own interpretation as how Spaniards behave and interact with one another. So I'm not really sure that the research changed my perceptions rather than expanded them a bit. For example, several opinion pieces expressed how many areas of Spain had people living extremely close to one another. My perception is that they did often live closer to families, and therefore it made sense that they would want to be closer to one another than what we are here in the United States, where we mostly keep to ourselves, except for places like New York City or Las Vegas or, even LA. A lot of places are open in those areas. Like apartments and things like that on top of one another. I don't think I could live with that at all, actually. As much as wine was discussed in 2013 when I was being a surrogate for my intended parents, and the opinion pieces seem to think or infer that Spaniards are often drunk, but with personal experiences, I just didn't really actually see that. I believe my intended parents and most Spaniards are fairly moderate because they're not feeling like they can't have that glass of wine. Whereas in the United States, we always want more. Everything that we want is based on what do we not have. I think I touched on dinner time, which was just super interesting. Also, my Spaniard friends were very trusting. We are not like that here. At least I'm not. I know that most people that I know are not very trusting. There's a lot of research that goes into whether or not somebody will form a relationship or friendship with another person. And when my Spaniard friends got off the plane, the first thing they did was hug and kiss me, and basically they trusted me with their child's life without really any questions. That's just not how it is here. So that was a very surprising thing. I thought it was kind of nice that they were welcoming and open, and they were not as reserved as I would have expected them to be, mainly just because we're just different here. I think the thing that surprised me the most was the wine in pregnant women. I guess I just couldn't understand it because I wasn't allowed to partake in it, partly because I had a contract to follow, but also because it just seems like every time you Google something or every time a news story happened or, fetal alcohol syndrome just came up constantly. I was told by my intended parents and a couple of their doctors that having one glass of wine with a meal really helps with iron absorption. I would have never known that if they hadn't told me that. So that was kind of my biggest surprise. Anyway, hopefully this gives us a perception on culture and perceptions on, various different people, where they're from. Hopefully it gives us a little bit of insight about how people think differently. Now, I do have a Christian worldview, but I do respect that other cultures have different differences. And that's the end of my presentation. I hope you have a great day.